So we've seen how to add markers to our clips and to our sequence in the last tutorial, and you'll remember I did this with an audio track. In particular, I added clip markers to the audio in the source monitor. Now I did this out of habit and for accuracy, although it's just as accurate in the alternative way I'm going to show you in this tutorial. So I suppose adding markers to a clip in the source monitor for me is just habit then. This time, first of all, I'm going to add clip markers directly to our sequence, but remember, only to the actual clip. Here's how. I'll open a movie file by dragging this particular file here to the timeline and just randomly placing the CTI here just for this example. Now, if I go to the top of my screen, I can easily click on the Marker tab and roll down to Set Clip Marker and to Unnumbered there. Oh, by the way, you can add up to 100 unnumbered markers. In all honesty, I've never really got anywhere near that many when I'm making movies, but I'm sure many people do. Anyway, I'll add another clip marker. I'll move the CTI and do the same process again. Marker, set clip marker, unnumbered. Now if I want to quickly move through the sequence to the markers, here's a shortcut. On the PC, Shift plus Control plus, and either use your right or your left arrow key, appropriate to where the next marker is. Okay, back again. Now remember me saying I don't tend to use a tremendous amount of markers? Well, that's because I tend to film and edit the movies I create for clients on my own. For me, it's rare to receive unedited footage. Having said that, I want to show you something that does help if you work as part of a team. If you've populated your sequence with markers, and let's add some sequence markers now by going to Marker, Set Sequence Marker this time, and Unnumbered, then by double-clicking this newly created marker, we get this dialog box popping open for us to enter pertinent information that might help a colleague understand why you added that particular marker. For example, in name here, we could write this information, overlay and fade in introduction title. And dependent on how long you want this overlaid title to last in duration here, you can set the length of time you want this to occur. I'll just set it at this. And notice in a moment when we close the dialog, the actual duration of time that this introductory title lasts. And in comments here, you could possibly ask a question that you want your colleague to consider the answer for, or whatever you think would be relevant as extra information there. And we'll just click to OK this. OK, so that's how we use the marker menu that we find across the top up here, and how we can add notes so that we can help, I suppose, ourselves, and probably more realistically when we are working with colleagues. OK, good one. I'll leave it here and we'll progress. In this creative razor editing tutorial, I'm going to illustrate a way to use the razor tool to cut up an audio narration that was recorded for this Cheshire Pub Walks guide so that it is more delicately paced than during the original raw audio recording. Let's listen to the audio recording first. I'll just open it up. It's in my audio bin. This one here, I'll double click to open in the source monitor. And I'll just play it back so that you can hear it.
Once you've walked past the church, you need to cut across this woodland. Do make some time, however, to listen to the ducks and breathe in the cool air and lean on this footbridge for a few moments. Although it doesn't look like it, it's totally stable. Ducks will approach you and quack for food. After pausing for quiet reflection, continue over the bridge towards open countryside.
Okay. So you'll notice here that the clip is 24 seconds and 9 frames in length. Just go to the beginning there. And if you now look down at the timeline, what I've done is I've added 4 different video clips to video track 1 here. This first one, the second one here, a third one, and this fourth one. All becoming quite familiar to us now. And the problem is the length of these 4 clips together, as you see, by the end of the sequence here, is around about 34-35 seconds in length. So therefore, if we were to simply add this narration to audio track 3 here, we would have a problem in that it would be 10 seconds shorter than the actual video itself, this going to be created video sequence. So what can we do to help alleviate this problem? Well, as I said, the narrative recording there is, despite being well recorded, is probably too bunched up in terms of there are no spaces in between some of the phrases and sentences used. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the audio into sections and then just randomly place it on the timeline, and therefore then I can adjust where I place them on the timeline so it fits quite nicely within the 35 seconds. So first of all, I'll just find where I want the first audio section to be. I know I want the set-in point at the beginning there. That's easy enough. I'll just click play.
Once you've walked past the church, you need to cut across this woodland.
And I'll probably go to about there. So I'll just cut probably there. So if I set my out point now and just drag the audio there onto audio track 3, perhaps around, I don't know, maybe there. Now I'll go for the next section. Let me just see where I want to go to.
Do make some time, however, to listen to the ducks and breathe.
Okay, I'll probably go to about there. So this time I'll just cut there, I think. So that's my out point. However, I need to set the in point again, don't I? Where was the in point?
And breathe in the cool.
Probably easier if I just zoom out there and find where we were. It was there, wasn't it? Thereabouts.
Woodland. Do make some time, however, to listen to. Walked past the church. You need to cut across this woodland.
There, wasn't it? By the way, I'm not using the play button on the source monitor here. I'm just using the space bar on my keyboard. Okay, so we want the in point to be about there. Let me just check that that's right. Probably going to be better there, I would have thought. So I'll go for there. Now I'll drag this to the timeline to about there, perhaps. I'll zoom out. Now my in point needs to be around here this time. So I'll just drag you to about there, perhaps. Set my in point and hit my space bar.
And breathe in the cool air.
Perhaps take that to there, that'll do us. And yet again, drag this to the timeline, to there. Have a listen again. Just set my in point to be there this time.
And lean on this footbridge for a few moments. Although it doesn't look like it, it's totally stable.
Perhaps take that to around there, that'll do us. And drag that section to the timeline. Set my in point again to be there. Let's listen now.
Ducks will approach you and quack for food.
Okay, that will do there. Quacking ducks. And place that about there. And probably then this last section.
After pausing for quiet reflection, continue over the bridge towards open countryside.
Okay, that'll do us. So that's the last section. So I'll drag that to the end there. I don't need the source monitor open now. So let's just look at where we've got up to. Okay, so the audio isn't quite as we need it. So now I'll go to the beginning and just space these out a little bit better. Maybe that one to there, maybe that one there. And just move these along so that we've got some room. But at least they are playing with a little bit more pauses in between. Okay, probably not exactly right, that is it. Well, in fact, I'm absolutely sure it won't be right. But at least you get the principle of what I'm doing. Okay, I'll just take that to about there. Maybe that one a little bit there. Okay, so that's done. Now we have this narration in place, and I've added some music in the background. We can use this short 30-second sequence as one element of the finished longer sequence for this part of the walk. In the next very brief tutorial, I'll play it through so you can see and hear the outcome of the 3 elements put together. See you in a second. As promised, I'll play back where we've got up to with the brief sequence we compiled in the last tutorial. Now, owing to the way these VTC courses are put together, this won't play back as smoothly as your films, but if you go to the resources folder, you should be able to play this sequence in better quality. Okay, so we've added narration, music and fades between the clips to achieve this.
Once you've walked past the church, you need to cut across this woodland. Do make some time, however, to listen to the ducks and breathe in the cool air. And lean on this footbridge for a few moments. Although it doesn't look like it, it's totally stable. Ducks will approach you and quack for food. After pausing for quiet reflection, continue over the bridge towards open countryside.
Now, clearly this is still not good enough yet for release, but for demonstration purposes, I hope you've been able to follow along okay. In the next tutorial, I'm going to look at how we create a freeze frame image of one frame of our video footage. Okay, see you in a second. Okay, in the last tutorial, albeit very brief, we saw our sequence so far. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that looks okay, and I'm using the word, or the two letters, okay, advisedly, because it does contain some shaky camera footage, and really it's not that complete. So we'll continue working on this. So what do I think it needs? Well, if you look at the program monitor now, you'll have noticed I've added a photograph image here and a titling area here just to inform the viewer of this film whereabouts on this particular walk they are up to, i.e. in this example we're between Stretton Church and Walton Reservoir. And we've got some distance information here that the walk is around 3 miles, and should you need refreshment, there are these 3 locations here. Anyway, as I say, I've added this title photograph and this text here because, by necessity, with the type of film it is a walking guide to Cheshire, then of course the viewer will want some information rather than just visuals. And, as we have here, I've included a photograph, but what do we do if we've not actually got a photograph available? In this case I did. Not only did I film some footage around this wooden bridge over this pond, but I also took some photographs too. That's the advantage, I suppose, of taking a photograph camera rather than a video camera, because you get, obviously, better quality photographs. But you might have discovered a particular shot that you might want to use partway through one of the video clips. For example, if I go to the first one here, just put my CTI there, well, that might be a photographic shot that you might want to use. You could add some titles up in this tree area up here, or across the handrail that runs from the bottom of the screen to about middle. Perhaps you could go to the next clip and look at this and think, well, maybe that's a better frame I want to use, or possibly there's another one over here, or here, 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 wherever. Imagine I did want to use this particular frame. Well, it is as simple as that. You just search around until you find the frame you want. And then, one method of doing this, if you are working on the timeline and the program monitor, and you can do this in the source monitor as well, but seeing as we're in the program monitor at the moment, what you can do is, see this button here? I'll just roll over it. It says export frame. And as it says, it pretty much does just that. It'll export this one frame from this video clip itself. So if I just click that button, we get this user interface, the export frame user interface, and the name here automatically gets filled in for us, introduction.still001. Now you can change that should you want to, and I'll call it bridge still number 1. And the format I can choose is either Windows bitmap by default, or use the drop down and choose from one of these particular formats: DPX, GIF, JPEG, PNG, Targa, or TIFF. Well, I'll choose JPEG and make sure that the path where I want to save this particular frame is the correct frame. So I'll just browse to where I want to go to, and it's here in this photographs folder. I'll just click on there, click OK, make sure the path is correct. Yes, that's the path now I want to use, and just click OK. And now that frame, this one here, has been saved for us in this photographs bin. I'll just open it up, but it's not there. Now, it doesn't automatically import it into the bin for you. You have to manually do that. Okay, so just be aware of that. So now, if I just click on this photographs bin, right click, import, go to the photographs folder on my hard drive there, and now we can see this bridge still number 1 JPEG is there for us. So I'll open that and it imports it for us, and there it is. I'll double click it and there it is in our source monitor. Okay, I can take the CTI to the beginning, click right to the beginning there, and you can see that this is the original footage we've got along the timeline, and this is the still photograph that I want to use, perhaps as an end sequence at the end of this particular clip. Now at the moment it does look a little bit blurred to me, so what I should do is take this into Photoshop or another image editing tool, but I may as well use Photoshop seeing as that's what I use, Photoshop CS5, and that way I can optimize this so it looks a little bit sharper on the screen, or if I want to adjust the colors or do something like add some text like I have here, I've made a white border next to the photograph and added the text to it. So that's what we'll do in the next tutorial. We'll look at how we integrate Photoshop with Premiere Pro. Okay, see you in a second. Right, we've now got our still image, this one here, this bridge still, number 1, JPEG, that we captured from this clip over here, this bridge number 4 clip. Now, what I could do is I could just left click on this still image and drag it onto the timeline there, about there, shall we say, at the end, and I'll just go to that division, hit the backspace on my keyboard, just to enlarge it there, and there is our still image. But as I said in the last tutorial, it's a little bit blurry for me, and maybe the light isn't quite what I want. Perhaps it needs a bit more contrast, it maybe needs darkening a little. So, what we can do is take this into Adobe's Photoshop and adjust it as necessary. Just before I do, out of habit, I'll just hit save on my keyboard. Okay, just in case anything goes wrong. It never has, but you never know. Better to be safe than sorry. Okay, so I'll just go over to Photoshop with this. Now you can do this a couple of ways. You can either make sure you're clicking on the photograph itself and right click and come down to edit in Photoshop there, or make sure you've got the photograph highlighted and come up to edit here and drop down to edit in Photoshop. Okay, it takes you to the same place, so I'll just click it now and Photoshop there opens up for us. And there's a photograph inside of Photoshop. So as you can see, it's maybe a little bit too dark there, so I'll hit Control L on my keyboard and I'll just adjust this maybe to about there, or perhaps just for convenience sake I could just hit Auto, and that's sort of maybe not quite right for what I want, so I'll just take it a little bit darker to possibly there. That'll do. And perhaps I want to filter this to make sure that it's sharper, so I'll just go to Filter and down to Sharpen and across to Smart Sharpen. Just click on there and just roughly change the amount here to something I want. Clearly I'm not doing this with any real intensive purpose here. Just click OK. I'm just showing you this as an example. OK, I'll just hit save and make sure the quality is there. OK. Now I just want to go up to image here and come down to image size. I just want to show you something. I'll just bring this over here. I just want you to see that the width and the height there are 720 by 576 pixels, which is exactly what I want, and the resolution is 72 pixels per inch. Now I want it 720 by 576 because I'm using the PAL format. If you're in America, it's NTSC, and the dimensions are slightly different. Is it 720 by 480? Can't remember. I'm sure all you American users will know what the size is. Now the reason I pointed that out is because I don't know if you can see this, but there's a little black line down here and a little black line down there, so I just want to crop that out. So I'll just get rid of that. I'll just come in this side as well. I'll just crop it to about there. Ooh, missed it. That'll do me. So now, clearly, because I've cropped a little bit off the width, if I go to image and image size, then I'm at 688. Well, I'm not too bothered about that, because if you remember, back in Premiere Pro, I'll just flick over to that now. With the original image I had here, I had the photograph there, and I've got this white area to the left with all this text on it. So we could do something similar. I'll just nip back over to Photoshop, and there we go. I could do with making this reduced in terms of width, so I'll just crop again. I'll perhaps go to there. The reason I've gone to there for no other reason is because this bar coming down here leads me right into that corner there. So now if I go to image, canvas size this time, just bring this over, click on here, change the dimensions to pixels there, and we've got 576 for the height. That's fine, that's what I want. But now I just need to make the width here 720, click OK, and we get that white border running down there. Now I also want to just put a border right round the whole edge here. So what I'll do is I'll just choose a colour at random from the path there, which is that colour now, and I'll just drag around the edge there, edit, run down to stroke, and 5 pixels will do. Get rid of my marching ants, and there we go, we've got this nice border running all the way around. That's the same colour as the path here. I'll just save that. Okay, now at the present time I'm still working on, if you look up here, a JPEG. But what you could do is you could save this as a Photoshop format file, a PSD, for a very good reason. I'll show you in a second why. So I'll just go to File, Save As, drop down here to Photoshop, PSD, and do a save. So now I'm working on this PSD here. But if I just nip back to Premiere Pro first of all, we'll come back to this in a second. I'll just go to Premiere Pro now. There we go. And as you can see, our photograph in the program monitor here has now been updated to reflect this border I put all around it and this white space here. Okay, hit the backspace. There we go. Perhaps to about, maybe to about there, so I can see it better. There we go. Now the reason I saved this photograph as a JPEG like this is to illustrate how this works, the integration with Photoshop, sending this image out to it and then importing it and it being all updated for us without a problem. But really, because it's a JPEG, it's not quite as adaptable as the Photoshop format. So in the next tutorial, we're going to look at how we can add information, text perhaps, but extra layers anyway within Photoshop so that they become editable within Premiere Pro here. Okay, so we'll do that in the next tutorial. See you in a moment. In the last tutorial, we saw how to integrate Photoshop with Premiere Pro when we took a still image, a frame grab, from our video footage and optimized it to enhance its look when it was reintroduced into Premiere Pro. And we saw with this photograph here that this is the optimized still that we've worked on. Originally, we grabbed this particular frame from this footage here, bridge number 4, and we took this over into Photoshop and added a sort of purpley border around the edge there to match the color tint on the path across the pond. And we've added this white border down here so that we could add some text later on. Now we could either add text by going up here to title and adding new title default still, that's one way of doing it, or perhaps it's better, or certainly it's the way I prefer, as I've mentioned before, it's often more valuable to use a native Photoshop format file rather than a JPEG as we did do here, this being the JPEG photograph. Now the reason being, well, Photoshop files are usually made up of layers, and layers sort of work in the same way as they do in Premiere Pro, where we can have a video track along here and we could add another one to video track 2 should we want to and build it up, video 3, video 4, etc. In the same way as we've got 3 audio tracks here, these act like layers, and that's how it works with a Photoshop native PSD file. So I suppose when we build up a complex Photoshop image, we want to retain those layers so we can adapt that base image to display different versions of it at different points in our film. I'll show you what I mean. I'll zip over to Photoshop now, and here in Photoshop, as you can see, I've got this photograph here, and with the white border, which is this background layer here in Photoshop, and just above it on a different layer, I've got some text here. Walk 7 Stretton to Walton. It might well be, with this particular photograph, that we might want to add a different version of this photograph. So I could right-click, duplicate layer there, and I get this extra copy, the background copy, that is exactly the same as this layer here. Why would I want to do that? Well, I might want to put some filter across the top of here. I'll go up to filter, and I'll drop down to one of these artistic filters here. I could go for coloured pencil, shall I? And just choose one of these at random. Which one shall I go for? Dry brush there. I think I'll just go for that one just for demonstration purposes. And now you can see we have like a watercolour effect for this particular original image. There's the original image and there's the watercolour version. And there's the text over there. Additionally, we might want to add some more text. So I could copy this text there, duplicate layer, click on there, and this time I'll just change this text to say walk 8, and I'll just reverse this Stretton to Walton to say Walton to Stretton. That could be the reverse walk, coming in the opposite direction there. So now we've got this version saying Stretton to Walton, or we can have walk 8 Walton to Stretton. And of course it looks awful when the two are merged together, but leave it like that because that's what I want to see when we import this into Premiere Pro. So I'll just do a quick save, and now I'll zip back over to Premiere Pro. Okay, now in photographs here, I'll just do a right click, import, go to the folder I know it's in, and there's this bridge still number 1 PSD, Photoshop document there. Now this is the interesting bit and the important bit to watch. So I'll just click open, and we get this import layered file, bridge still 1 dialog box here. I'll just place it up there. And we can get some options now between import as, merge all the layers. If I were to merge all the layers, then really I wouldn't have achieved anything other than having a flat JPEG document, I suppose, or the same as. And that text there that we had, the 2 layers of text, walk 7 and walk 8, will have blurred together, so that's no use to us. So we can use the drop down there and go to merged layers, and we get to choose out of all these different layers we've got, 1, 2, 3, 4, which of these layers we want to use to merge. Well, it might well be that we don't want walk 8 Walton to Stretton there, but we want walk 7 Stretton to Walton. Merge that one with the background copy, which was the watercolor version of this photograph. Those 2 layers would be merged together and imported if I clicked OK. I don't want that. I could also go to individual layers, and what this would do, it would save all the different layers to a folder in my existing sequence here. I would get a new folder inside this photographs bin here, and the folder would contain these 4 different layers, and then that would enable me to then drag onto the timeline which are the layers I want to appear at that particular time. Alternatively, I could go to the last option there, sequence, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to OK this, and what this will do is it will create a folder with the layers in it. And inside the folder, not only do I get these layers, but I will also get a new sequence file. So I'll show you what I mean. I'll just click OK, and we get the dialog there. And if you just notice down here where it says bridge still 1, there's our folder or our bin just created. And inside there, I'll just reveal that. Inside there, we get the walk 8, walk 7. We get the background copy, the background original file there, and a sequence here, bridge still 1. Now if I double click this now, I create a new sequence here. Let me just enlarge this so we can see it, and I'll just go up there so you can see all the files. So by double clicking that sequence file that's been newly created, we get all these different layers, 1, 2, 3 and 4 on our timeline. So I could just hide the toggle track output there for that particular layer. So you can see up here on the image that I've got the watercolor image here with walk 7. If I wanted to remove walk 7 and just add walk 8, then I could do that there by clicking on there. The reason that we see the watercolor image here rather than the original photograph is because this is the way layers work within Photoshop and Premiere Pro. The base layer here, the photograph, is on the bottom, and if we place something above it and make that visible, then that's what we will see. Okay, right. So that's how we use Photoshop format options within Premiere Pro. Very easy to do and fabulously valuable when we want to keep all the different layers intact so that we have options as we create our film. Okay, right. Let's leave this here. See you in a minute. We saw back in the tutorials on the Tools panel how to use the Rate Stretch tool to stretch a clip's length so that it lasts longer than its original filmed length. We also manipulated the timing of the clip the other way by reducing the clip's timing length so that the result of its subsequent playback meant it was speeded up. So you can see a clip's timing therefore can be distorted easily with the Rate Stretch tool. The Rate Stretch tool found up here. I'll just import one of these video tracks here onto the timeline. I'll use that one just randomly. I'll just reduce its length to 15 seconds there. And just to remind you, I'll just grab this rate stretch tool, and all you need to do to stretch the timing of this is just left click with your rate stretch tool and just drag like that. And now you can see here that this clip is now 183% of its original length. And the way the percentage works, the higher the number, i.e. the more positive the number is above 100%, then that simply means the clip speeds up. Going the other way, I'll just left click and go the other way, right across here. Now we have a percentage here of 60.61%. A negative number below 100% means the clip slows down. I'll just hit Ctrl Z to go back to where we were a couple of times. There we go. And I'll get my selection tool. Now, in this tutorial, I want to look at other ways of achieving the same thing, and also illustrating how to reverse time. I imagine you appreciate why time stretching is useful to make a clip's length fit a specific time parameter in the sequence. But it's also a creative tool too, and comes in especially useful in the Cheshire Walking Guide I'm doing here, because slow motion clips can make perhaps plain video footage look more pastoral or dreamlike. So, how do we stretch time and reverse time? Well, we've just seen the rate stretch tool up there on the tools panel, so here's another method of doing a similar thing. Just left click on the clip to make sure you've selected it, then right click and go up here to where it says speed duration. Just click on there and you get this dialog box, the clip speed stroke duration dialog box, and you can see that we have a couple of parameters here that we can adjust. We have a speed parameter, and that's set at 100%, naturally enough at the moment, because the speed is 100% of its original length, i.e. it's not changed. And we're told underneath the duration of this clip is 15 seconds and 2 frames there. So if we want to adjust this, I'll just go back up to speed. We can do it one of two ways. I'll go to speed first of all, just click in there, and I'm going to make this 200%. And did you notice what happened in the duration here? The duration has now shrunk down from nearly 15 seconds to 7 seconds and 13 frames. So if I now click OK, then our clip length comes down to this 7 seconds and 14 frames, and we can see it there as we roll over it there at the end. Ctrl Z to go back to where we were. And I'll just right click again, go up to speed duration, and let's do it the other way. If we don't want to adjust the speed percentage there and we want to adjust the duration, then just left click on it and drag to the left to reduce the actual duration time. And if I click OK, then we can see it's been reduced. Ctrl Z again to go back to where we were, and right click, go up to speed duration, and I want to look at this checkbox here, this middle one, maintain audio pitch. If I click that, then that will mean the audio embedded within a movie. By clicking the maintain audio pitch checkbox there, it means that despite you speeding up or slowing down your visuals, the video component, the audio itself, the pitch of the audio, will be time stretched to make it fit what your video is going to stretch to, but the actual pitch of the audio won't speed up to sound like Mickey Mouse or slow down to sound like Barry White. Okay, I'll uncheck it for now, and I'll just cancel. I just want to bring in another clip. I'll bring in this one at random. I'll hit backslash so we can see both clips. Now, I'll just right click again, go up to speed duration, and I want to point out this ripple edit shifting trailing clips checkbox. I'm going to leave it as it is at the moment, and I'm going to hit 200% here and click OK. Now, as soon as I did that, this clip has been reduced in length, but we've left this gap in between here. This clip hasn't moved along to where the new division should be. And it's very simple to resolve this. I'll just click Ctrl Z a couple of times. Very simple to resolve this. Go back to speed duration there. Make sure this ripple edit shifting trailing clips has been checked. Change this to whatever your speed is going to be, 200% in this example. I'll click OK now. And you can see that this clip has now been reduced in length, but there is no gap. We don't have to use the ripple edit tool afterwards to bring this clip up against it. Okay, so that deletes the gaps for you so that you don't have to mess around. Go to Ctrl Z again, And the last thing I want to show you is speed duration there. This reverse speed checkbox clearly will reverse the clip, so it would play backwards. So if I just click OK now, then this clip will play backwards, and we can see that by this percentage here has got a minus sign in front of it to say that that is minus 100%, i.e. it's the same length as it originally was, but now because of the minus sign there, that indicates it's going to play in reverse. And the good thing about this is, if I right click now and go to speed duration, notice that the checkbox reverse speed is still checked to indicate to us, if we haven't spotted that by mistake, to indicate to us that this is reversed. And if I just check that now, then we go back to where we were. Isn't that good? So that's how we distort time with our movie clips within Premiere Pro. Just before I leave this tutorial here, let me just delete these. I want to do a similar thing, but with this time with a photograph. So I'll just bring in one of these photographs at random. I'll just bring that one in, and you can see by default my photographs are set up to be imported at 5 seconds in length. Now if I want to adjust this, it's very easy to just roll your mouse over there and drag it to wherever you want it to go to, but I just want to show you this method of the speed duration dialog box. So I'll just click on there. Now this time the speed parameter there has been greyed out because it's not a moving image, it's a photograph. So that option doesn't become available to us, but the duration does. And the ripple edit there would do as well. Only useful, of course, if we had other clips further along the timeline here. So the duration can be adjusted quite simply. Left click on it and just drag to wherever you want it to go to. Left click to the left to reduce the duration, and keep your mouse click down and just go to the right to increase it. So now we've gone to 8 seconds and 2 frames there. So I will leave this tutorial here now that we've distorted some time. I'll see you in some time from now. Perhaps the biggest drawback to our creative process is being held up whilst trying to achieve something during our editing. And in my experience with previous versions of Premiere Pro, one of the things that held me up more than most was waiting for my PC to finish something called rendering before I could smoothly play back my edited footage. Well, owing to the fact that Premiere Pro CS5 is now only compliant with a 64-bit operating system, I've upgraded my system to take this into consideration, and I'm glad I did, because not only is my new Studio PC 64-bit compliant, but additionally Premiere Pro CS5 now includes something called a Mercury playback engine, which in layperson's terms means that many of the bottlenecks that previously held me up have been obviated now, because my graphics card now shoulders the burden of much of the intense processing, leaving my PC CPU focused on the operating system and running Premiere Pro smoothly, often without the need for rendering. So, what exactly is rendering? Well, you know when you click the play button to view your sequence? If you only use pristine clips, and I mean pristine clips in that you don't do any editing, then Premiere Pro's playback will simply display these clips exactly as they are shot. However, should you make any edits, such as transitions between clips, or add certain filters, then Premiere Pro has to synthetically generate new frames for each frame that the transitional crossfade, if we are using a transition, this transitional crossfade occurs. Let me just show you what I mean. I've got two clips on the timeline here, this first one and this second one here. Now, if I were to play this back, then I would have no problem, because I've not actually done anything to these two clips. They are just simply as shot, because they are simply as they were filmed. There are no filters added. There are no transitions added. Now, I know we've not really looked at transitions yet, but we will come on to this quite soon. But just for now, just bear with me. I'm just going to make a video transition between these two clips. So I'll just go down here to the video transitions folder and go across to dissolve there. And I'm going to use one of these dissolves. Now, I don't want to use one of these here, because this indicates that these don't really take any rendering, because these are accelerated effects, as we can see by this icon here, the accelerated effects icon. If I were to use one of these, this cross dissolve for example, then if I were to insert it between these two clips, this yellow line that runs along here won't really change. So let me just show you. I'll just put it there so nothing happens. I'll just remove it. Whereas if I got one of these other crossfades, I'll go for the dither dissolve there and place that between the clips. Then now notice how we get this red section here of 1 second, because that's the default setting I've got here for my transition. I've got 1 second worth of frames, and because I'm using the PAL format, that's 25 frames. So when Premiere Pro gets to this point, this transition, it's going to have to try and play back this section, this cross dissolve. I'll just play it for you. Did you notice how it sort of has to blend the two different files together there? I don't particularly like this filter, but it's a filter there that does require extra rendering. So at this section, as I've just said, Premiere Pro has to synthetically generate some new frames, 25 frames to be exact, for each of these frames that runs across here, where this crossfade occurs. Now, this is because the two clips that have the blended area of a 1 second transition will need to have a new 1 second clip made. And this 1 second transition clip is called a render file. So when the CTI gets to that point there, if I do render this file, and I'll show you how to do this in a second, when the CTI does get to that point, the newly rendered file plays back in this section so that you don't perceive any drop in video playback quality. Yes, you can play back without rendering, as we've just seen, but the processing required increases, and as a digital workaround, Premiere Pro auto-reduces the playback quality. Incidentally, this doesn't affect the final movie. If you play back the movie, the eventual movie, then all these sections will be rendered, and so you won't notice the difference. It's just whilst you are working inside of Premiere Pro. So how do I create a new rendered file just for this section? Go up here to Sequence, and you can see these options here: Render Effects in Work Area and Render Entire Work Area. Kind of speak for themselves. Now, we've not got much on the work area at the moment, so I'll just click that one, Render Entire Work Area, and now we can see this rendering dialog box going through and generating all the frames that need to be created, so that the whole of this section of these two clips play back smoothly inside of Premiere Pro here at full quality. And the yellow line that we had before to indicate that it's not quite at full quality has now turned green to indicate that it is now at full quality. So if I just take my CTI to there and just play this section from here to here, you'll see the cross dissolve there, the dither dissolve rather, and it should play back quite smoothly. Here we go. There we go. I don't really like that effect, but it's something to see. I'll just remove it and go back up to cross dissolve, and I'll drag that one onto the timeline there. I'll just take it to maybe about there. And I'll just play this back, and so now that when it gets to that section there, it just smoothly played it back. Okay, I'll just drag the timeline back into there. So you can see that this section, this 1 second section there, requires a new digitally combined 25 frame section that makes all these different frames between these two clips here. Okay, makes sense? Good one. Okay, see you in a moment. I'm just going to whiz through a couple of functions in this tutorial before we move forward into the next section. Now, the reason is I want to show you these functions here so that if I do any of these things over the remaining part of the course, you're not left looking puzzled. Okay, so in no particular order then, I'll get started. As you can see, I've got one video clip on my timeline. I'll just add another one. I'll go for this one here. It doesn't really matter which one. I'll go for that one. Now, if I grab the first clip here and just move to the right there, anywhere, then as you can see, it very quickly splits the second clip and drops into the middle of it there. Perfect, if that's what you want to do. However, I'll just click Ctrl Z. If you want to move both clips to the right in time, one way of doing this is by doing something called grouping clips. And to group clips, just left click with your mouse outside the clips you want to involve and just rubber band around the clips, let go, and now both of these clips are highlighted. And if you now go up to clip and drop down to where it says group there, then that now links both of these clips together. So if I grab the first one there and just move to the right, they both move together. And it doesn't really matter which part of these two grouped clips you grab now. It could be the audio part of the second one, and just do that, and it takes it to the beginning for us. And if we want to ungroup them, then just left click on any of the clips there, and instead of going up to clip at the top there, just right click and go up to ungroup, and now they become movable independently like that. Okay, so that's grouping clips. If this second clip here was maybe there on a timeline, and this first one was there, or possibly there, and for some reason there was a gap in between these clips here, and I wanted to close that, well, I would just simply right click in the gap there and just click on Ripple Delete, and that takes you to that position. So imagine I trimmed this clip here, and I want that now to butt up against here. Just right click and Ripple Delete. It's as simple as that. Okay, I'll just move them both to the beginning of the CTI. Now if I look over at the program monitor over here and look at this output button, just click on there and come down to playback resolution, we can see we have these two options, full and half. If I click on half, what that's going to do, or rather what that will do from now on, when I play back any clip in the monitor here, and incidentally you can do this in the source monitor as well, now when I play back this clip, I won't be seeing all the pixels that make up that video clip. I'll only see half the pixels. And the reason we do that, I suppose, is so that whilst we are working on our timeline and we're trying to save some CPU, then we don't really need to see perfect full pixel quality in the monitor. It does not affect the final outcome of your movie. So despite these clips here only going to play back in the monitor up here at half resolution, when you do play it back, when you render it to a DVD, then the resolution will still be full. So go back onto the output button, come back down to playback resolution, and I think I'll take that up to full. I want it on full. Possibly you've noticed this zoom level here where it says fit. Well, if I just use the drop down there, I can make that 50%, I could make that 10%, I could make that 150%, whatever I want it to be. If I don't need to see much of the actual clip itself, I could take that down to 25% or 10%. If I really have great eyes, can't see a real reason why I'd want to do that. Certainly not with my eyes. Anyway, so I'll take that now to fit, and that makes the actual video clip itself automatically fit inside this program monitor. Now, related to this, if I have a clip involved on my timeline, and I'll just grab one of these movie files, I'll just take that one onto the timeline there. If I've got a clip like this one on the timeline that was filmed at a slightly lower pixel dimensions than the full resolution of 720 by 576 that I have set up as a default, being the PAL format, well, this movie clip was filmed at, I think it was 480 by 640, or the other way round rather. If we look up into the project monitor up here, it's 640 by 480 pixels. Well, that's not quite 720 by 576. Well, if I want Premiere Pro to automatically increase this pixel ratio so that it fits my sequence settings, just right click on it there and go up to scale to frame size, and I'll just click there, and now automatically Premiere Pro has upscaled it for me. I'll go to the beginning of the sequence. Occasionally you might want one of those synthetic media video clips generating, so you've got a count in, one of those universal count-ins that sometimes you see at the cinema. If you want one of those, just come over here to this button, the new item button, drop down to universal counting leader there, and we'll just set up to this default, and I'll just click OK, and I'll click OK again. There we go. And now we've generated a new clip here. I'll just take it over to the source monitor, and there it is. And if you played this back, you would see these different numbers counting down for us. Okay, I'll just close that. Let me just remove a couple of these tracks, that one, clips rather, not tracks, and I'll go up to here and I'll just grab one of these video clips and just place it onto the timeline. I'll just remove these tracks I don't need. There we go. And I'll just reduce the length of that, don't need it to be that long. Now, we've already seen with the razor tool, if I just click anywhere at random on this video track 2 here, then video track 2, this clip bridge number 1, gets split in half, as does the audio there. But how do I use the razor tool to cut all clips on the timeline at exactly the same place? Well, one method, hold down your Shift key and Control, and then click, and then automatically right down there at that position we get the clips razored there. Alternatively, just place your CTI in the timeline, perhaps there, and just press Shift Control K on your keyboard, and perhaps there again, Shift Control K. Okay, so that's a shortcut. Right, so those are a few tips and tricks that we could use to help us when we are creating our movie. Okay, good one. I'll leave it here for now, and I'll see you in the next sequence of tutorials. As good as your video footage is, as it comes out of your camera and into Premiere Pro, it's a dead cert that it can be enhanced by the use of video effects. Video effects native to Premiere Pro, i.e. those that come as the factory install, are pretty good and allow you to either enhance your footage subtly or dramatically. I'm not going to go through every available video effect. That really would take up a VTC course of its own. No, I'll simply talk you through how to access them whilst indicating some of them and how to use them. Now, in this tutorial, I've imported a movie clip here, and it just so happened this morning when I filmed this on the way back from taking my girls to school that a hair ran across the actual frame. If we actually look at the footage here in the program monitor, what I was focusing on was just this path here, and I was going to pan up and above this fence to look along this path. However, I noticed as I was filming that a hair ran across this field, and you can just see the hair when I play it back in a moment through these gaps in this fence here, and I pan across to the right as it tries to get across the field, and no doubt home to safety. Now, whilst I play the clip through, just observe not just the animal bouncing around the field there, but also how kind of washed out the actual video clip is itself. There doesn't appear to be much contrast or definition there, so I want to really work on that using some of the effects that come with Premiere Pro. Okay, I'll just play it through for you now. There's the rabbit there. Possibly a hare. It's probably a hare, isn't it? What's the difference? I know one's got longer ears than the other. I know I should know, but I can't remember. Okay, so as you probably noticed, it does need some work, this clip, if we were to use it, because it does look a little bit washed out. Okay, so in the next tutorial then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk through some of the effects that we can use that are accessible by going over here to this area in the bottom left and clicking on where it says effects there, clicking on that effects tab, and you'll notice all these different settings down here, these different folders, these different presets, these buttons across here, these three, and this area here. Okay, I'll see you in the next tutorial where I'll talk you through this. In this tutorial then, I'm going to follow on from what we looked at in the previous tutorial when we actually looked through this clip on the timeline here of this bunny bouncing about through the bracken. And as I promised, I would look at this tab over here, the effects tab, so that's the focus of this tutorial. Now, you'll notice it's actually separated into a few different areas. I'm fairly sure you could work out what this area is up at the top here with the magnifying glass. This is a search filter field. So if I typed in something here, perhaps I'm looking for a convolution filter. Type in the letter C first of all, and instantly any filter that contains the letter C is thrown open for us. I'll narrow down the search, CO, convolution. And I suppose if I just drag this down here, I will see other filters here like compressors, crossfades, etc. So that will simply show all the filters with CO in the name. If I carry on to conv, then I'm pretty sure it's just going to be convolution there. Yes, it's just convolution. Oh, except for this one at the bottom, converter. You caught me out, Mr. Adobe. Anyway, I'll just remove that. So that's the quick way of searching through all the different filters that you have natively as part of your installation, and additionally any third-party effects that you might have installed too. Now, I'm not going to look at third-party effects in this tutorial, and in fact I'm not even going to look at audio effects either. I will look at audio effects in a couple of tutorials from now. The focus of this tutorial then is just video effects. And probably the next thing you'll notice in the effects pane here are these three different tabs here. One that says accelerated effects, one that says 32-bit color, and one that says YUV effects. Well, by clicking any of these three different buttons, then we restrict the effects that we will be able to see within all our bins here to the type of effect that we click here. So if we only want to see 32-bit color effects, you would just click on there, and then Premiere Pro throws open all the different 32-bit effects that are available for us. Perhaps you only want accelerated effects, then we get to see the accelerated effects there as well. And the same with YUV effects. Okay, makes sense? Now, in terms of the accelerated effects there, the first button, this will only be available for you as long as you've got a accelerated effects graphics card in your machine. I use a Quadro FX 3800, and that's compatible with these accelerated effects. If you look at the help guide that comes with Premiere Pro, then you'll see Adobe explaining that Adobe Premiere Pro Mercury Playback Engine uses the GPU to play back sequences. So effectively, the effects that you use, the accelerated effects, the processing involved is derived from your GPU, your graphics card. Now you'll remember in the last tutorial I did say that this movie clip here was a little bit washed out, so I want to change it a little bit. So let's have a look at what we've got available. I'll just click on the video effects bin there and just reveal it, and maybe perhaps we could do with some color correction. So I'll open that one, and maybe I could use this fast color corrector here. And the way to do this is if you just left click on the effect that you want to use, and then just simply drag and drop on top of the video clip itself. Okay, to very quickly undo it, Control Z, maybe choose a different one. Maybe you could go for brightness and contrast. Left click and drag that on top again. But notice nothing appears to have happened over here in the program monitor. Well, I'll deal with this more as we progress through this section, but just for now I'll just nip up to this tab up here next to the source monitor where it says Effect Controls, and you'll notice now that we have this line here where it says FX, brightness and contrast. So I'll just click to reveal that, and if I want to increase the brightness I can do, if I want to increase the contrast I can do. I'll just increase the contrast. Quickest way for me to do it, just left click on this slider here and just drag one way or the other. I could go right across there, and you'll notice the program monitor looks fairly horrible now, and maybe if I drag it the other way it really washes out. So really it's a delicate balancing act between where you think you should boost or reduce the actual contrast there. I'll probably go to maybe around 17.5 there. That should do it. Now, if you wanted to add another effect to the same clip, well, that's easy enough. Let's just find something else we might want to use. Perhaps we'll go down to Stylize here, this bin. I'll reveal that, and maybe let's make it look pretty horrible just for this example. Maybe we'll use this Find Edges filter. I'll just drag that onto the top, and now instantly the Find Edges filter, as we can see in the program monitor, creates this effect over the top. Okay, so that's pretty much all you need to know to start off with about how to use effects. All you need to do is just simply find the effect that you want to use, drag and drop on top of the actual video clip, and from that point on, just go to Effect Controls and adjust as necessary. Okay, right. I'll see you in the next tutorial. Now we've seen where our effects are, down in this panel here, the effects panel, and how to apply them to a clip. It could be useful to us if we could then subsequently adapt them so that we can exercise more creative control over their look. Well, you can't. So that's the end of this tutorial. Only joking, of course you can. And I'll just show you how to do it. I'll just use a video effect on this clip. I'll just take one. I'll use this stylize find edges filter here. I'll left click and drag it onto my clip. And I don't know if you noticed immediately that our yellow line that ran along here has now turned red. So this means that this clip will need rendering if I want it to play back smoothly. Okay, look back at the rendering tutorial if you need more information on this. So, how do we then adapt the look of this clip should we want to? Well, I'll just go up to the tab up here where it says Effect Controls, and you can see that our filter here, Find Edges, has been added to these effects up here, these video effects where it says Motion, Opacity, Time Remapping. Then below the Find Edges filter, we've got Audio Effects, Volume. Now, apart from the Find Edges filter that we've just added, all the other attributes or parameters here permanently exist within this effects control. And that's because these are known as fixed effects. They are always here regardless of whether you've got a filter applied to your clip. So if I hit Ctrl Z on my keyboard to go back in time to undo the application of this Find Edges filter, I'll just do that now, then we don't remove any of these other attributes, motion, opacity, time remapping and volume. Because as I said, these are always here regardless of whether we add anything at all. And if we do add a filter, as we just have done with this Find Edges one, let's do it again, left click and drag it onto the clip. If we do add a filter, an effect there, then that's known as a standard effect because it requires us to apply it to the clip itself. Okay, let's have a little bit more of a look at this Effect Controls tab. First of all, along this top line here, we have this name, Distorting Time, and it's called that because that's the name of the sequence that we are using. If we look down at the sequence area here, there is our Distorting Time sequence. So up here, we begin with Distorting Time, and just after it, it says hair.movie, and that's because that's the particular clip that we are looking at. If I click in the timeline view down here outside of the clip to disengage it, then immediately the effect controls disappears because there's nothing in the effect controls for it to do. And as it says, no clip selected. So let's select it again and it comes back. To the right here, this is known as the keyframing area, and this kind of mimics the timeline area. As you can see, we have a CTI here, which we can move along to wherever we want it to go to during the length of the clip. But if we don't want to see that and we want more room on the screen, just click that button there where it says Show Hide Timeline View, and we expand the whole of this area. I find it very useful to keep it, so that's how I will have it. And just below where it says Video Effects, we have a Show Hide Video Effects tab there button, so if we want to hide all the video effects we could do the same with the audio effects, we could hide them there too. I'm just going to reveal them both, although I'm not going to look at the audio effects for this particular tutorial. We'll look at that in a later tutorial. Now going back to what I said about these fixed effects, motion, opacity, time remapping, if I want to change the opacity, for example, I'll just click on the reveal there, and the opacity is just the way it shows clearly on your screen. So 100% is full clarity on the screen. If I wanted to reduce that, I could just left click on it and take it down to 25%. And if we look over in the program monitor, then we can see that the actual clip here itself has been reduced in opacity, i.e. it's not very clear. So let's take that back up to 100%. Another way of doing this is just click the reveal there and see this little drag slider, left click and take it up to 100%. And did you notice that this line here moves as you adjust? So if I take it to about 50% there, that line went halfway down, and I'll bring it back up again. And this line will become very important to us in a later tutorial when we're talking about keyframing, so just bear that in mind. At the moment it's static for the length of the clip at 100%, but later when we look at keyframing we can adjust this over time. Okay, I'll hide the opacity there and click on there too, and now I'm going to go to this Find Edges effect that we've applied, and I'll just reveal there. Now, can you see this little FX button there? If I don't want to see the effect, or I want to try it out without it being there, just click on it where it says toggle the effect on or off. So if I click on there now, then not only in the sequence view down here, the timeline view, because we've switched the effect off, our CPU doesn't need to process, so therefore it doesn't need to render, and our red line has turned yellowy orange again there. And over in the program view there, program monitor, then as you can see, the filter has been taken away. I'm going to click it back on again now, and immediately we see the effect of the filter there. And as I said, the focus mainly of this tutorial is to show you how we can adapt these effects if we want to. So I'll just click here where it says blend with, and I'll take this slider up to about, maybe to about 50% there, so we can see, what's that, 51%? So we can see now over in the program monitor that we've got a blended version, a 49% versus 51% view of the two views combined. Half of it is the actual real clip, and half of it, or thereabouts, is the actual filter over the top, the effect over the top. And of course, you can adjust this to get the effect exactly how you want it. Okay, I'll take it back up to 0 there. Alright. Now, if I only wanted to hear the audio of this clip, by the way, and not see the visuals, if I wanted to just test the audio was okay, or relevant, then this button down here, where it says play only the audio for this clip, I would just click on there. And the button next to it, where it says toggle looping audio playback, and that would just simply play the audio in a loop. So I could ascertain whether the audio is suitable for that particular clip. It might well be that there was some aircraft going overhead, or something like that that needs removing and perhaps replacing altogether entirely with another audio clip to make it look and sound much more pastoral. Okay, right, that's a good overview of this particular function and how we adjust effects. Okay, let's move on. As I've mentioned earlier, not only can you insert effects, native Premiere Pro effects, onto clips, you can also install what are known as third-party filters or third-party effects. And third-party simply means that these are extra filters or programs or effects that you purchase from another company, not Adobe, another company, and you install them so that they become available to use within Premiere Pro. Now, in my experience, what I found is not only do they become available for you to use in Premiere Pro, they also become available for you to use in After Effects too. And one of my favourite companies for third-party effects is a company called Red Giant. And what we'll do in this tutorial then, we'll look at inserting a couple of Red Giant filters across this clip here. So all we need to do is we need to make sure that we are on this panel here, the effects tab there, and come down to video effects, and once you've installed your Red Giant filters or any other third-party company filter, then you will find them in this section here, the video effects, as I can find mine here for Red Giant, a company who make these filters, Magic Bullet filters. I'm going to look at these first of all, these Magic Bullet Misfire filters. I'll just reveal that there. And within this folder, we can see that we get a few different filters here, ranging from Misfire Basic Scratches, Deep Scratches, Displacement, Fading, Flicker, etc. And if you want to give your film an old-fashioned, almost corrupt look, in that it's covered in scratches, you could use this one, this Misfire Deep Scratches. I'll just left-click and drag it on top of the clip there, and immediately you can see in the program monitor here that generated deficiencies within the clip here are added. So you could click anywhere within the timeline there and you will be able to see these different scratches here. Now, I know I've got the red line here, so really I need to render this. So I'll quickly do that now. I'll go up to Sequence and Render Effects in Work Area. It shouldn't take too long, 235 frames there. Okay, done. So now, when I click play on here, you can see all these terrible scratches across the top of here. And that would be a quite useful effect if you want to degrade the look of your film and perhaps made it a black and white clip too. I'll just reverse this by clicking Ctrl-Z to remove it, and clearly just have a look through all these different filters that come with this Misfire section. I like this one in particular, this misfire vignette, I'll click on that and drag it on, and now you can see there's a darkish area around the edges of the clip now that wasn't there previously. I'll just remind you what it looked like. I'll just come up to the effect controls there. I'll click on the toggle the effect on or off button, and you can see now that this dark area has been removed, and put it back on again, and so we get this lovely sort of vignetting quality that goes around here. In particular, it would work on this clip because the lighter area is in this section here where our eyes are drawn into. Okay, and I'll remove that, Control Z, and I'll just now move down onto this filter here, the Magic Bullet filter, one of my favourites, great filter, as you'll see why in a second. I'll just left click on it, drag it on top of the clip. Now when we look in the effect controls here, we can see this extra filter has been added, this Lux filter. Oh, I'll just remove this misfire vignette. I'll just right click on it and click clear there. So now if I want to adapt the looks here, I'll just left click on the reveal, left click again on look, and now I'll click edit, and as soon as I do, it's going to fire open what's called the looks editor so that I can choose a look that I like the look of. And at the moment it doesn't look like we can do much, but I'll quickly whiz through this. I'll just go to here where it says looks down the edge of the screen there, roll over it, and we can see that we get all these different types of filmic looks. Basic, and as soon as I open it, then you can see all these different presets, and if I click on them, notice it updates here too, all these different presets that I could use should I want to. Imagine I wanted to warm the clip up a little bit, so I would use the basic warm there, or perhaps if I really wanted to go over top, basic warm max there, makes it look really summery, perhaps a little bit too much for the early morning walk this morning about 8:30, and let's try something else then. I'll close the basic setting there, and perhaps I want to try a black and white tint. Maybe I want auto art there. Perhaps that's a good auto art black and white filter that we could use, and then apply that flickering misfire scratches that we saw a moment or two ago. Perhaps you'll want something like, let me close the black and white tints, maybe you'll want to choose a popular film preset, so you can see things like this bronze aggressive. Maybe that's the sort of look you are comfortable with. I'll try that anyway. So there are a number of different things you can do along here as well. There isn't enough time during this particular tutorial to go through every single one. So I'll just click OK for now, and as soon as I do, then we go back to Premiere Pro, and we can see the effect has been added already to the clip. If I want to just hide it for a second to see what it originally looked like, clearly just click on the effect on or off button there. That's with it on, and that's with it off. I quite like the way it looks. So what I could do is, if I wanted to keep this, go to sequence and render effects in work area. Now this is going to take a little bit longer than the previous effect because this maybe takes up a little bit more processing power, and of course dependent on how good your computer is, then that will dictate how quickly or how slowly, I suppose, that this rendering process works its way through. Okay, nearly done. Didn't take too long really, and okay, done. So now we get the green line here. And so if I were to play this back, then this would play back smoothly for us as it does there. Right, so that's how we use third-party effects, should we want to, within Premiere Pro. And I would encourage you to go to Adobe's website and just link through from the Premiere Pro page, and you'll find a whole list of third-party effects that you could buy. Okay, good one. See you in a moment. In the last tutorial, we looked at visual effects, in particular video effects here, this folder, with all these different video effects that we could choose from, should we want to. Now, in this tutorial, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at another video effect, but they get a whole category of their own. I'm going to look at video transitions. Now, of course, to make a video transition from one clip to another, I do need at least one clip on the timeline. That's not strictly true, I don't suppose. If I cut this clip in half and then apply a transition to the middle, should I want to. So what I'll do is I'll add another clip to the timeline. I'll just go down to this one here called Tree and drag this onto the timeline. I'll just move to it so I can see it. Okay, that's the one I want. I'll just right click on there and click on this scale to frame size so it fills the frame for me there. And in this clip, through this gate here. If we just turn to the right and pan to the right, then this is what we would see, this tree here. Well, this tree that isn't a tree any longer. It's been cut down by the farmer, I suppose. Let's go back over to the effects panel over here, and we need to look in this particular folder here, this video transitions folder, so I'll just reveal it there. And inside this video transitions folder, we can see lots of other folders, as we might expect, with all sorts of different things that we could apply as a video transition. 3D motion, maps, page peels. We often see page peels in certain types of commercial film. But perhaps the most popular type of transition is this one here, a dissolve, and in particular a cross dissolve. So this is the effect I'm going to look at in this tutorial. This is the transition I will talk you through, this cross dissolve. But obviously you play around with all these different transitions to see which one you prefer the most. Well, it's all very simple. All I would have to do, of course, is just left click on the clip and drag it over onto the division between these two clips here. I haven't done it yet because I just want to explain what's going to happen. This first clip has not been trimmed. The second clip also hasn't been trimmed. So that means when I try to drag this cross dissolve, or in fact any transition, to the dividing line here, I'm going to get a message popping up. I'll show you now. I'll just drag it over the clip there, and can you just see how we get a vertical border either side of the clip there? I'll just let go now, and we get this message here, this transition warning, that there is insufficient media and this transition will contain repeated frames. I'll click OK. So that means that during this transition here, there aren't any frames that Premiere Pro can blend. So what it has to do is it has to artificially duplicate some of the frames. I'll click Ctrl Z to remove that, and I'll show you how to get around that problem. Sometimes it's unavoidable because the length of a clip that you are using is absolutely perfect. So what I often do, in fact I always do, and I recommend you do this too, make sure you always film a few seconds more than you need. That way you know you can trim the edge away when it comes to the editing process. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just take some frames away here. I'll just randomly drag this to about there, and I'll do the same with this one, and I'll just ripple delete there to join the two together. So now when I drag this transition over the top and drop it on the two clips there, I don't get the warning to tell me that Premiere Pro has artificially duplicated frames. So when it gets to this transition here, I'll just enlarge this, there we go. When we do get to this transition just about starting there, then can you see this sort of thin line going up there from the bottom there to the top there? Well, what this means is from this point until the division there, this first clip is going to fade away, and once we get to the second clip, this second clip will start at invisibility there and become more opaque as we get to the top of this division here, the transition division. So if I drag the CTI there, you can see there is a transition between the two clips there. Now you might be wondering how long this duration of this cross dissolve is. If I just roll over it, and you can see that pop up there right at the bottom says duration 1 second. Now, how do we change this? Well, do you remember when we set up our preferences, and I'll just go to edit now and drop down to preferences. When we set our preferences right at the beginning of the course, when we clicked on General there, we saw this Preferences dialog box. And in this section here, we get this that says Video Transition Default Duration, 25 frames. And as I've said before, because I'm using PAL, which runs at 25 frames per second, therefore this 25 frames translates to a transition of 1 second. Now just below, because we're going to move on to this in a second, just below it says Audio Transition is 1 second also. We'll look at the audio transition in a moment. I'll just zoom out a little bit there, move the CTI. If I want to alter the length of this transition to something else, then just roll over the end there, left click, and just drag it until as far as you want it to go, effectively. Okay, I could go right back there, and on this second clip I could do the same thing, left click and just drag it that way. So now, I'll just zoom out again, now this transition will take longer. And as I roll over it, it tells me the duration of the transition is 4 seconds 24 frames. So now for this tutorial, I've actually muted the audio so you can't actually hear it, and so it doesn't distract this narration. But if you do want to add a transition between the two clips, and I would do if I were you, if you've got a video transition, then I recommend that you also have an audio transition too, because as you get to the end of the clip here, there might be a bit of a jarring sound as the audio of the first clip stops and the second clip starts. So that's very easy to do. Let's just come up to audio transitions here. We don't get as many options as we do with the video transitions. We just get this one folder here, and we get these 3 transition defaults that we could use. I pretty much always use constant power, so I'll just go there, and the same if I want to, I can just extend the length of the transition, the audio transition there. So when this plays back, the movement from one clip to another not only smoothly resolves from one visual to another, but the audio blends together too, so you wouldn't really notice that there was a cut in the audio between the 2 clips. Okay, so that's the working methods that I use when I use transitions, both audio and visual, in Premiere Pro. So let's move on once more. Before I start this tutorial on integrating Premiere Pro with After Effects, let me guide you towards VTC's fabulous courses already authored on After Effects itself. I say this because this tutorial will simply explain what's possible with Adobe's integration between the 2 programs. I'm not going to go into an awful lot of detail about After Effects itself. So as I say, dive over to VTC there and grab the information that appeals to you. Whilst reviewing the VTC courses on After Effects, remember After Effects is a tool fairly similar in look to Premiere Pro, but does operate in a different area as indicated by its name, After Effects. What After Effects allows you to do with your Premiere Pro After Effects workflow is create an extra dimension to your footage after initial manipulation in Premiere Pro. Now, having said that, the reverse can be true too. I frequently find myself starting an After Effects composition, and composition is just After Effects' equivalent term for Premiere Pro sequence. Once I've started the After Effects composition and created the effect I'm looking for, it's only then I bring this into Premiere Pro as a newly rendered clip. Quite a laborious process, I agree. So the beauty of having both programs, After Effects and Premiere Pro, though, is that you can slipstream my more pedantic method just described by dynamically jumping back and between the programs, or as you work on your material. You might already know that Adobe's Creative Suite includes something called Dynamic Link that comes with Premiere Pro when you purchase the Production Premium or Master Collection suite of programs. Let me just define what this dynamic link is and what it does. Utilizing dynamic link means you don't have to render your clips and subsequently export them in one application before opening them in another. So, when you use dynamic link, then any edits you make in one program are pretty much updated, hence dynamic, instantly. When you do switch back and forth between applications, an icon appears so that you are reminded that this asset is shared with another program. Let me just quickly go through the process. I've got this clip on the timeline here, this Appleton Farm clip. I'll just go up to File, drop down to this section here where it says Adobe Dynamic Link, and I'm going to create a new After Effects composition. Remember, composition is just the term After Effects uses in place of Premiere Pro sequence. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. I'll click on New After Effects Composition. We get this dialog here asking us, do we want to make any changes? Is this fine? Is this what we're looking for? 720 by 576 pixels. The PAL format, well, that's good enough for me. I'm going to keep it like this. I'm not going to alter this in any way. So I'll just click OK. And I get the dialog here asking me to save the After Effects project with a name. Well, I'll just leave it as Untitled Project, and I'll just click Save. And immediately I get this link here, and this is the actual link to After Effects. Okay, at the moment, if I just double click on that to open it in the source monitor, it's just black. There's nothing there. There aren't any assets imported. It's just a link to say that a After Effects composition has been created. So what I'll do now, well, I'll tell you what I'll do first. I'll just clear that from there. We don't need that. What I will do now is I'll just nip over to After Effects. And as you can see, we have this same link here, with nothing on it, of course. And what I'll do is I'll just bring in the file here, this Appleton Farm file, and there we go. And if I just drag this down here, we can see the same clip in our viewing area here. Now, as I've said before, if I go too quickly here during the After Effects section, don't panic, just head over to VTC and you'll be up to speed in no time. So I'll just make a quick edit here in After Effects. Maybe I will just add a filter. I'll just choose one of these cinema styles here. Perhaps I'll drop down to, shall we just pick one at random? I'll go for maybe that one at the top there, Saint. Drag it over the clip there and we get this new look, this new filtered look to this clip here. Okay? I'm not going to do any more other than save it, and I'll pop back over to Premiere Pro, and now if I double click this to open it in the source monitor, then we can see that our clip has now been altered to show this filter that we added in After Effects, not in Premiere Pro, but in After Effects. And should I want to bring this now to the timeline, I could just left click there and drag it onto the timeline there. Okay, and there it is. That's what it looks like originally, and that's what it looks like now. Isn't that cool? Great stuff. Right, that's a very quick run through about what Dynamic Link can do for you, linking programs like Premiere Pro and After Effects. So do go ahead, explore, you'll find it dynamically wonderful. Okay, let's see you in the next tutorial. See you in a moment. Just as a prelude to the audio section of this course coming up in a few tutorials' time, I thought I'd introduce audio effects at this stage, seeing as we've been talking about visual effects in the previous few tutorials. Despite film being, by its nature, a predominantly visual experience, we mustn't overlook the role and impact that sound can have in our filmic experience. Without sound, where would we be? Just ask Charlie Chaplin. Nowhere these days. And when I talk about sound, I don't restrict my comments to just dialogue. I include background or ambient sound. Music perhaps plays a vital role in film, as does the use of sound effects. So it's important therefore to get all our sound recordings as crisp and detailed as possible. That way we can provide a multifaceted sonic soundscape that supports the movie and adds to the visual impact of the film. In fact, in my opinion, sound plays such an important role in filmmaking that even when a director purposely makes a poor-looking film, the sound is still recorded to a high standard. The Blair Witch Project springs to mind, where the director's construct was to make a film that was fictitiously filmed by students lost in the woods, and the film was purposely shot to look like this had really happened. Yet the sound was, by comparison, remarkably well recorded. So, all that said, let's look at what we can do to improve the sound that we've got recorded, or perhaps if we want to go the other way, degrade the sound in some way. Perhaps if we're making a science fiction film, for example, we might use a phaser across the top of the audio to make it sound a little bit more unusual. Anyway, let's have a look at what we need to do. Obviously, just go to your Effects tab down here, and instead of going to Video Effects, clearly we would go to Audio Effects here. Just click on the Reveal, and we get these three different sections, 5.1, Stereo, and Mono. Now, 5.1 simply refers to sound effects, audio effects that you might want to use when you are recording or making a film with surround sound. And then we get two further categories below, stereo and mono. Now, this audio track I've got on the timeline here was recorded in mono. Let me just play it back to you just to remind you.
Once you've walked past the church, you need to cut across this woodland. Do make some time, however, to listen to the ducks and breathe in the cool air.
Okay, so that's the audio I recorded originally earlier on, and you could probably tell that I've already optimized that recording as much as I possibly could in terms of getting rid of any background sound. I've compressed it so that the audio levels are fairly consistent. So now if I want to add any effects to this and perhaps enhance it in a different way, I'll just go to mono here, the mono folder, seeing as it is a mono recording. So I'll just reveal there and drop down, and we get an awful lot of different effects here. I'm just using my mouse wheel, by the way, to scroll down here if you're wondering how this is automatically scrolling down. As you can see, there are an awful lot of different effects here, all sorts of different VST effects, VST being a standard setup by a company called Steinberg, who make particularly good recording software. Wavelab and Cubase spring to mind. Check out the VTC courses on both. They're both fantastic. Can't remember who authored them. Do remember them being both extremely good though. Anyway, let's just pick one of these at random. Where are we up to? Phaser, pitch shifter, reverb. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll use a reverb. Seeing as this recording here is very dry, all you need to do, as you would do with a video effect, just left click on the effect itself and drag it over the top of the audio recording there. And now instantly, up here in Effect Controls, not only do we get the volume which is already in place, we get this reverb tab here to say that we've got some reverb that has been added. So I'll just play back a little bit for you.
Once you've walked past the church, you need to cut across this woodland.
Okay, so now you can see, or rather now you can hear, that the narration there seems to be swamped with some reverb. Sounds a little bit like she's in a cave. Now if you want to adjust this, just click on the reveal there, and where it says custom setup, reveal that too, and you can see a little bit of a graphic there. If you can't see it all, don't panic, just go to this division here, left click and drag to the right there. And I'll just drag down here as well so we can see more of it. And then straight away we can see that we've got this reverb user interface so that we can adjust any of these parameters: pre-delay, absorption, size, density, low, high damp, and the mix. So if I wanted to decrease the size of this cave it sounds like she's in, I could do this in real time. I'll just hit play so we can hear it back and hear the adjustments as I play around with them.
Once you've walked past the church,
I'll just click on here,
across this woodland. Do make some
left
time,
click and
however,
drag it down to about, what's that, 7% there?
Breathe in the cool air.
Not quite as reverberant.
For a few moments.
And as it says there,
Although
sets
it
a room
doesn't look
size.
like it,
I'll just left click again and just take it up higher.
Approach you and quack for food. After pausing for quiet reflection, continue.
And now we've got about 90% size there, and quite reverberant, very cave-like. So I'll take that down again to about 14% there. Now you don't have to adjust these dials like this. What you could do, can you see the graphic here? I'm not sure you can see it so clearly, but there are some little white dots around the graphic. So if I click on this dot here, well it's a square really, left click and just drag to where I want it to go to. Okay, drag it further away, drag it in, drag it out. And then that will adjust, as you can see here in this dial, the absorption. If I click this one, for example, left click and just take it over here somewhere, then we can see the pre-delay has gone up to 100 milliseconds. And all pre-delay is, it means that whenever audio is detected, then that dry sound, the original audio recording, will play for 100, in this case 100 milliseconds before the reverb kicks in. Now, once we've adjusted this and we think to ourselves, well actually I preferred it as the default. I can't remember, out of all these dials, what was the default? Well, just go up here to reset, click on there, and there we go. It jumps back to the default for us. Okay, if we want to remove a reverb, then just right click on it there and come down to clear. Now I'll just drag up here again so we can see some more of these effects. And I'll just go to this phaser. I'll drag on top of the audio there, go to the beginning and play that back.
Once you've walked past the church, you need to cut across this woodland. Do make some time, however, to listen to the ducks.
Okay, so you can hear what a phaser sounds like, and again you can reveal this so that you can see a user interface so that you can adjust this as you feel necessary. I'll remove that. Right, we'll leave this tutorial here. Now we've had a good look around what we can do with audio effects and how we can apply them and how we can adjust them as necessary to suit our tracks. Okay, now speaking of adjusting things, in the next tutorial we're going to look at adjusting the visuals in terms of the opacity, and we'll adjust the audio volume in particular. Okay, right, see you in a moment or two. Following on from the previous tutorial, what we're going to do in this tutorial is look at how we adjust the opacity, i.e. the visibility of different video clips, and how we can easily adjust the audio straight from the timeline here, rather than going into the audio mixer that we find up here. Okay, first of all, just notice what I've done on the timeline. I've got two video tracks. The top one here, video track 2, is what we can see over in the program monitor. and I'll just use this toggle track output to disable it so you can see what's on the video track underneath. Okay, so I'll just put that one back, and clearly we've also got audio track 1 and audio track 2 that are the embedded audio recordings that were recorded as part of the film at that point. So first of all, let me just remind you how the audio tracks differ in terms of what you can actually hear. As we've just seen with video track 1 and 2, if I click on this toggle track output, then that hides whatever is on that particular video track lane. Now, going down to the audio tracks here, we have these toggle track outputs also, these little speaker symbols, and by clicking on there, that would completely remove the audio. So you would only hear, in this case, what's on audio track 2. However, if we make them both active, then unlike how the video works, where video track 2, or whatever is the highest in the track lane there, with the video tracks there, whatever is the highest lane, that becomes the visible and only visible video track. But the audio works in a different way. If we have both these audio tracks active as they are here, then both audio tracks will play back at the same time. They will blend together. Audio track 2 won't take precedence over audio track 1 and block it out. No, it doesn't work like that. They just blend together. Okay, so it's a difference that we need to remember. Now what I'll do now is I'll just click up here on the effect controls, and at the moment there is nothing highlighted, there is nothing here. We do first of all have to click on one of these clips, so I'll click on this video track 2 first of all, and as soon as I do, not only do we get all this information here, but we get the actual video track name there for us so that we know for sure, just by looking at it, which video track we are working on at that point, because it's very easy to just click the wrong one by mistake. Okay, so that's the video track 1, 0561 here, and video track 2 is 0562. Okay, so now we are on video track 2 there. I'm going to look at this category here, opacity. And opacity simply means what is visible. If I click the reveal there, we can see the opacity is set at 100%, as we would expect. And so because it's set at 100%, only that video track is showing. If we do want to allow part of video track 1 to show through, despite what I've just said earlier on about nothing below being allowed to show through, well, there is a method, and that is by reducing the opacity here, this 100%. You can either left click on it and drag to the left there and just show what is underneath, going back down to 0%. 0% means now that this video track 2 is invisible, despite down here having this toggle track output enabled. If we want to bring this back, just click the reveal there, and this slider here allows you to bring it back as well, maybe to make finer adjustments. And at the moment, we did see this in an earlier tutorial too. Well, I alluded to it anyway. This white line running along here, along the timeline, this is now set, as you can see, at 0 there, 0%. So if I click this slider and just drag to the right to bring the opacity back up, approaching 100%, that white line there is increasing more towards the 100 there. At the moment we've got to 45.1%, let's bring it up higher. So as we bring that up, we can see now at 100% the opacity of that clip is 100%, i.e. totally visible and obscuring the video track underneath. Let me just take it down to 0 so that video track 1 is showing. I just want to show you a little trick that we can use with keyframing, and there is a tutorial later on devoted to keyframing, so I'll do this reasonably quickly. At the moment we've got this set at 0%, however, maybe at this point over here in the clip we want it to be 100%, so let's just take that up to 100%. And notice as I've done, this white line has become a ramp now, so at the beginning it's at 0%, and when it gets to that point there, it is at 100%. So as you can see, as we do this, it fades it through. So if I play this back now for you, playing this back through shows us that video track 2 is emerging from invisibility there, and we get, I'll just switch it off, we get the full opacity of video track 2 there as it gets to that point. If we just quickly want to remove these keyframes, just go to it there and click on there. And let's just bring this back up to 100%. Okay, I'll just hide the opacity now and we'll work on volume. So down here, just to remind you, we've got these two audio tracks, and they both play back simultaneously and they blend together. If we want one, clicking this audio effects volume underneath here reveals the volume level here. Now this might appear slightly confusing if we go back to opacity there, because when the opacity here was set at 100%, that's the difference, 100%, then that was fully visible, and at 0%, then that meant it was invisible. So don't get this confused here with the audio level. 0 here, it isn't a percent, it's a decibel level. This works in almost the opposite way. 0 is optimum volume, and dragging the slider here right down to this infinity sign is the audio being muted, completely being muted. If I can bring it back up a little bit, then notice if it's not quite muted at total silence there, we're now down at minus 53.4 decibels. So this kind of works in the opposite way to what we would expect. 0 right up here, there, is optimum volume, and right down here is silence. So don't get that confused in terms of this saying 0, nearly there, there we go, and the opacity saying 100. As I say, they almost seem to work contradictory to each other. Okay, right, we'll leave this one here, and in the next tutorial we'll look at how we very easily and very quickly disable effects. Okay, see you in a moment. Often, once we've added an effect to our footage in the timeline, we might then subsequently adjust the effect's parameters so that it suits our footage more precisely for our needs. But we sometimes need to be able to switch the effect on and off so we can evaluate what the clip looked like in its pristine original state. I find for me this increasingly occurs when we add more than one effect to our clip. So that's what we're going to do in this tutorial. We're going to look at adding effects to our clip, this one here, and not only adding one clip, but I want to show you how we can add 2 clips or 3 clips or however many you want to. And from that point, I want to show you how we evaluate the difference adding these different effects to our clip can make, and how we can change these settings on the fly, and how we can switch them on and off so that we can judge whether the effect is working really for us, aesthetically. So first of all, I'll just add some video effects to this clip. I'll come down here to Image Control, this folder here. I'll just reveal that, and maybe first of all I'll add this color balance effect to the clip there. And I'll come up here now to Effect Controls, and as we've seen previously, if I just click on the reveal there, then we get these settings for this particular effect, red, green and blue. So if I want to, for example, bring down the intensity of the red in this clip, I could just click on this reveal here and just drag to the left there, and we can see that the red is being drained away from the actual video clip itself. Or if we wanted to add it, then we could really pump it up there to 200, or pretty much 200 there. It does look a little bit horrible there, so let's bring it back down to maybe 80, 81 there. And perhaps now, because I've adjusted the red color balance, perhaps I should adjust the green too. Maybe take the green down a little bit there, possibly to about there. I'll just hide these now, so we have more room up here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another effect to this. Well, it's very simple. Just click on another effect there, and we'll go for the one below, color pass, and drag that onto the top there. And now we can see that we have 2 effects in our effects controls. And the way it works is, again, a little bit like layers or these video lanes here. The priority of the effect order is whatever is on the bottom is the effect that shows through most. So now let's adjust the color pass here. I'm going to allow on this image the sky to show through rather than anything else. So I know the sky here is blue, so I need to click where it says color here, this color picker, and just move over here to anywhere in the blue area, just click there, and now we can see a little bit of blue has been allowed to show through, but not much. Well, we will have to adjust this similarity slider here, so just drag that to the right, and as I'm doing that, have a look in the program monitor and see how the blue is being allowed to show through there. And if I take it to about there, I think it is, then the blue sky is showing through. Of course, this is affecting the whole clip because I haven't masked certain areas away, and because of that, then you can see the blue pixels throughout the clip, even on the wall here and on this window, are showing through. Now if I want to toggle this effect on and off, just to show what it was like without it and just show the color balance, go to where it says FX there, toggle the effect on and off. So if I click there, then that turns off this color pass filter. All it does, it disables this effect. It doesn't remove it or it doesn't reset it to anything, it just disables it, almost as if it's not there. And if I click back there, then of course it brings it back. If I want to adjust to the factory default, then just go to this reset button at the end there, click on there, and then that takes everything back to where it was originally. So let me just add this phone box this time, the red of the phone box, to show through. I'll just adjust the slider. So now, is it probably around about there? Most of the clip is in black and white because we're only allowing the red colour to pass through. So the telephone box there, perhaps it wants a little bit more, maybe there. So only the telephone box, the red of the telephone box is showing through. There's a little bit of green creeping through there in the trees. We could mask that out, but for this example we won't. Okay, and I'll just hide these. Perhaps if I want to quickly go to Setup, then I could click this button here where it says Setup, click on there, and the color pass settings here throws open this for us so that we can probably ascertain what looks better for us easier because we have this dialog box. And I can drag this slider maybe a little bit more just to allow something else through, a little bit more of the red to come through there. And perhaps we should go to maybe there. We've got a little bit of the green showing through there as well. The green of the trees there on the leaves. But certainly in the first original state where we've got everything else showing through all the other colours, then in our output sample state, then we have pretty much drained all the other colours away. Okay, so I'll just click OK. And that is updated in the program monitor accordingly. And as we've seen previously, if we want to remove an effect, and in this case this color balance effect, if I just switch that off, not really having a massive effect there, other than maybe adding a little bit more contrast to the sky there. But if I wanted to remove that, just right click on it and come down to clear. So now the only effect affecting this clip is this color pass. Now if I wanted to save what I've got here as a preset so that I could use this setting here across many different clips in a timeline, then I would just right click on the color pass there and click on Save Preset. And I would give it a name and any description here that I thought might help me. I'm going to leave that. I don't really want to save it as a preset, but it's there if you want to. Right, we'll leave this tutorial at this point. And in the next tutorial, I'm going to look at this tab up here, so we can look at how we adjust spatial properties. Okay, right, see you in a moment or two. In this tutorial, I'm going to look at what are called spatial properties of a clip, or in other words, where spatially or physically on the screen a certain asset or element is, and how we adjust these spatial properties of a clip or any other asset is by using this motion tab here in the effects control panel. Now you might have noticed that in my program monitor, using the same clip that we have done in the previous tutorial, I've now got this black border all the way around it. And the way we resolved this, because this film clip was originally filmed in the movie format, QuickTime movie format, at 640 by 480 pixels, which is lower in size than the PAL format of 720 by 576. The way we resolved this was by right-clicking on the clip and going up here to Scale to Frame Size, and then that filled the frame for me. Well, that is the best way, I suppose, but if we want to do it a different way, I'll just unclick that there so it goes back to where it was. If I now go up to Motion here, making sure I've clicked on the actual clip itself. In Motion, I'll just drop this reveal and we can see that we've got these spatial properties revealed for us, position and scale. Below scale, we've got uniform scale, rotation, anchor point and anti-flicker. In this tutorial, I'm going to deal with the position and scale generally. Now, when I click on Motion up here again, just notice around the clip itself we get this bounding box. And of course, as I roll my mouse over the edges there, left click, and I can just drag in or out wherever I want it to go to. Now the reason it kept its dimensions uniformly is because this uniform scale checkbox is ticked there. And notice where I've left it here, quite small, the actual scale size has been reduced to 49.5%. So let's just bring that back to 100%. Around, let's get there, nearly there. Oh, I went too far then, didn't I? So, okay, there's 100%. So to fill the screen with this clip, rather than using this scale to frame size, then what we can do is just use this scale here to go larger than 100%. Now you would assume an easy way to do this would be to reveal scale and drag the slider above 100%, but you can't. It won't allow you to go more than 100% with this slider. It'll let you come down in size, but no larger than 100%. So you have to do this method. Left click on it and just drag it to the right until you see it fill the frame there. And I reckon it's about there. Is it 120%? I'll take it up to there, 121% for demonstration purposes for this tutorial. Now, of course, if I accidentally go down here to the clip again and go to scale to frame size, this is going to upscale again yet further, so we focus in more on the actual clip. But remember, the scale size here doesn't change. So now, perhaps if I take this down to 100%, simply by clicking in it there and typing in 100, hitting enter on my keyboard, and then now that has taken it down to 100%. So now we are working on a percentage here, graded at optimum level at 100%. Now if I want to move this clip to the side, or up or down, then I would use these positional X and Y axes here. If I want to take the clip across to the right, I would just click on the first one there and just drag to the right there and perhaps put it maybe there. I'll just take away the edge of the building and leave the phone box up the side there. Now you might want to do that because you might have this video clip on a video layer 2 perhaps, and underneath on video layer 1 you might have another clip underneath which is maybe a photograph, and in this black area here you could have some text. Okay? And of course, if I want to bring this clip down, then I would use the second axis there, left click and just drag it down. If I want to bring it up, of course, take it the other way. Okay? I'll take it back down to, where were we? Around there, weren't we? 288. 360 here and 288 are the default settings that we use to take the clip back to its default setting. We could use this button here, reset, and that takes us back to 360 by 288. So if we move maybe that way too far and we want to go back to where we were, click reset and that takes us to the 360 and 288. You'll become very familiar with these two numbers as you move your motion position around. If for some reason we want to rotate the clip, let me just take this down so we can see it better, maybe to 71 there. If we want to rotate the clip, then here where it says rotation, you can either just left click and drag the number there, or you can use the dial and just take it to where you want it to go to, and you'll see a degree setting of rotation there. I'll just reset back to where we were. Okay, so that's a run through of spatial properties and how we adjust them using this motion tab found in the effect controls here. Now, in the next tutorial, we're going to find how we can adjust the position or the scale or the rotation over time using something called keyframes. Now, we have kind of touched on keyframes occasionally through this course so far, but we've not really devoted a whole tutorial to keyframing. So, that's what we'll do in the next tutorial. Premiere Pro, of course, allows us to edit and create movies from our various assembled movie clips, and in this respect does a thoroughly good job. But, trust me, there will be occasions when you want to add extra movement or motion to elements that make up your finished sequences. Well, keyframing is the solution provided by Adobe with Premiere Pro. What is keyframing? Remember how each second of your video footage is really just a blend of 25 frames, or nearly 30 frames per second in the USA, and these frames, whether it's 25 a second or 30, they flicker by to give the illusion of movement as your CTI goes across the timeline. Well, keyframing allows us to isolate a chosen frame, like a frozen snapshot of time, and then by moving to another frame later in the sequence and making some form of adjustment to the second frame chosen, when the sequence is played back, then movement of some form appears to take place as the first frame appears to morph into the second frame. Now, I agree that might have made your head spin a little, and it does sound much more complicated than it actually is. So what I'll do is I'll show you an example. What I'm going to do with the clip we've got on the timeline, I'm going to add the Find Edges filter that we found in the Stylize folder. I'm going to add it to this video clip. Then by using keyframes, I'll transform over time this illustration type view into the original full color version. As I say, I know it sounds complicated, but it's actually not that complicated if I just show you rather than tell you. So I'll just go to this video effects folder here. I'll nip down to Stylize. Where are we? There we go. Open that up and just get this Find Edges filter and drag that on top of the clip there. Now if you look at the program monitor, you can see the effect that this Find Edges filter has had already. And if you look in the timeline here, you'll see that I've now got this red line that means this clip needs to be rendered for smooth playback. So I'll just quickly render it now. It shouldn't take too long. How many frames have we got there? 350 frames and nearly done. Okay, there we go. Done. So now my render line has now turned green. So this should play back smoothly, no problem. Okay, so this is what we do now to provide some movement to this Find Edges filter. I'll just go to the effect controls here, click on Find Edges and reveal it. And what we first have to do with keyframes is, where we want the adjustment to take place, we have to add what's known as a keyframe. And the way we do this is just click on this where it says toggle animation, just click on there now, and immediately to the right here we can see that right at the beginning, below our CTI, let me just move it, we've got this sort of little diamondy shape, okay? So that's known as a keyframe, and that means I'm telling Premiere Pro at this point, i.e. the beginning of the clip, I want this clip on the timeline to look like it does in the program monitor, i.e. with this Find Edges filter there. However, perhaps when I get to about this point in the sequence, a couple of seconds in there, 3 seconds in, then I want it to actually change. So what I need to do is I'll just click that reveal there, and I'm going to drag this slider right across to the right. So now, when we get to 3 seconds in to the clip, then as you can see in the program monitor, we revert back to the original state. Now if I take this back to the beginning, that's how it's going to start, and at 3 seconds, I'll just slowly drag the CTI. As we get to 3 seconds there, it blends back into the original version. So let's just quickly look at the Effect Controls tab here, and just see how this works. We've got the keyframe here, the first one, that tells Premiere Pro, right, at this point, that's the filter there. I want it to look like that. But slowly this ramp will curl up to this position where this keyframe is to allow the original frame to show through and to obscure the Find Edges filter. If you decide you want to move the keyframe subsequently, then just click on it and just drag it to the position you want it to go to. Maybe we could take it there instead. So now I'll just click on the program monitor and we'll just play it back. And as you can see, very slowly, it's morphing back into the original footage there. Okay? So that's really how keyframes work. Now this didn't play back too smoothly because if you notice down on the sequence section here, we now have the red render line returned. And that's because we've made some changes. If we want that to play back smoothly, of course, we're going to have to render it again. But remember, every time you do make a change with a keyframe, then with some effects, and with this one in particular, then you are going to have to re-render. So now if I go to the program monitor and play that back, that should play back much more smoothly, as it does. Okay, as we get to the point there where not only does the hair just run along here, but the clip resolves back to its original state. Okay, I'll wrap up this tutorial here, and in the next tutorial I'll show you a different method of using keyframes to add motion to the clip. Okay, see you in a moment. Following on from the last tutorial, where we used keyframing. What I'm going to do in this tutorial, as I mentioned in the previous tutorial, I'm going to use keyframing to add some motion to the clip we've got on the timeline at the present time. What I want to do is create a digital zoom either in or out of this hare movie clip here as it gallops across the grass. And the way to do this, of course, is by using keyframes. So we need to use this motion area here. Just click on the reveal first of all, and where we've got scale, I'm going to add a keyframe first of all. So now by clicking on there, we've added this first keyframe at 100%. Now it might well be with your footage that you have something that you want to focus more upon. And in this case, what I want to do is I want to try and find where this hare runs across here. Well, it's just about there. I can just about see it. Maybe if I take it to there, maybe. There's the hare. And at this point, I want to zoom in a little bit. So if I take this scale position of 100 there, just left click on it and just drag to the right. And perhaps if I take it to 200, where are we? Oh, 201 there. So if I take it to 200 now, if we look at the program monitor, we can just about see the hare there. And perhaps what would be a good idea is to move the clip down in the program monitor so that we can see more of it centrally in the program monitor. So if I just click on this where it says 288 there and just drag to the right, then that is going to bring the clip down more into the center of the frame. And by clicking the 360 axis, left click and drag to the right, then that will bring it into probably about there, the center of the frame, roughly anyway. And so what you can see now is we've added a keyframe here for the scale. We've gone from 100% at the first point, the first frame, to at this position 200%. Now, with my position changing here, I need to add a keyframe here too for the position, so I've done that there. But we haven't got a keyframe right at the very beginning. So let's just go to the beginning and notice what happens on our screen in our program monitor. Unfortunately, because the first frame in our timeline is 100% and we've subsequently moved the X and Y axis of this clip, it's actually off the screen there, isn't it? We want this to revert back to the original 360 by 288 position. And the quickest way, I suppose, is by clicking on the reset here. Unfortunately, we can't do that because it will reset these keyframes too. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to manually add in these figures. So just click on the 211 there and add in 360. And on the 514, just add in 288. Remember how I said in the previous tutorial, these numbers will become your friend. You'll have to remember these 360 by 288 X and Y axis numbers there. Okay, so now, at the beginning of a frame, we are at the natural position, 100% and 360 by 288. But when we get to this position, we have zoomed in there. So let's have a look at this in the timeline now. I'll just click play. And as the camera watches the hare there, it appears to be zooming in, doesn't it? Okay. There we go. Now the only problem you might find, and you probably did notice it on this clip as well, when you get to certain positions on the timeline and you've zoomed in at 200%, you have to make sure that the quality of your video is very good. Otherwise, this 200% digital zoom in is going to degrade a little bit. If you use high definition cameras, then you can probably get away with zooming in to a higher degree. Okay? Right, we'll leave this tutorial here on how we zoom in using keyframes, and we'll progress to the next section.